Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to the start of a brand new series. Yes, I'm starting a series this late into NHL 23, but we are going to be starting up our Throwback 2009 franchise mode with the Tampa Bay Lightning, as I promised. This is going to be probably a pretty short series compared to, obviously my other series that have just happened in this NHL 23 season. But I do hope that I could get this team at least maybe one Stanley Cup before the end of it, but it still will be a very short series, so more than likely we're going to try and contend as soon as possible, even though we're technically like one of those rebuilding type teams. But we could easily take maybe like 1 to 2 seasons to get us back into that type of fold. But anyways, 2009 is a pretty fun year for roster builds, and that's why I did this roster build. We have 6 divisions across the entire league, so 3 in the East, 3 in the West. As you can see, there is the Atlantic Division with the Rangers, Flyers, Islanders, Devils, and Penguins. You have the Northeast Division, which has the Bruins, the Sens, the Maple Leafs, the Sabres, and the Canadiens. And then you have our division, which is going to be probably pretty tough for us. They have the Thrashers, which obviously aren't really a huge threat at this point in time. There's the Hurricanes, who are pretty decent, I would say, but they're also not really the best. The Panthers are not really necessarily the best, but the Washington Capitals definitely is going to be a tough team to play in this division because of Alex Ovechkin and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see if we're able to make the playoffs soon or not. Then we head over to the Western Conference. You can see they have the Central Division with the Blackhawks, Blues, Red Wings, Preds, and Blue Jackets. The Northwest Division with the Flames, Wild, Canucks, Avalanche, and Oilers. And then the Pacific Division with the Sharks, Stars, Kings, Ducks, and Coyotes. But yeah, it's going to be, I think, an interesting thing to see. How does franchise mode actually simulates? Because I've never really tested this out fully, so I don't really know how good Tampa Bay simulates, for example, in a franchise mode. So definitely going to be exciting to see what happens with that. But anyways, this episode, we're basically just going to be looking over our roster, and I will show you guys basically who we have under contract. I will also probably sim through the preseason. That way we can sim up to the start of the season and take a look at what the AIs are running for the start of year number 1. And that'll probably be it for this episode at that point, because I don't want to go too far ahead, but I don't want to go too little either, because like I said, we don't have a whole lot of time in this series. But let's show you guys what our lines are looking like at the moment. Actually, maybe I'll go to the contract screen instead, just because it might make it a little bit easier. And then we'll also adjust our lineup accordingly so we can get the best chemistry results as possible. But start off with our centers. You can see we have Vinny Lecavalier at the age of 28. Likely to get our team to being competitive. We have to hold on to him long term, but the good thing is he is signed already long term with that big extension in place, so we have him as our top line center. Really good player, obviously. We also have Jeff Halpern, so kind of more of a bottom 6 center, I'd say, like a third line center, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's like a third line center. Good face-off type of guy, but really much not the offensive superstar we kind of need for that second line. But obviously, we do have a young Steven Stamkos who's 18 years old, and he should be able to easily get into the top 6 this year to start off with, and hopefully he develops really well in the first few years of this franchise mode. We also do have Ryan Craig, who's not really much of anything, kind of like an AHL top 6 / bottom 6 forward. Then we head over to the left wing side of things. We have Ryan Malone, so not a bad top 6 forward option. Definitely will be good up there on the top 6. He's also signed quite long term, so we won't have to get rid of him unless we want to trade and upgrade him. But solid kind of like power forward type guy. We also have Vinny Prospal, who's only signed here for a couple years, but he is kind of dropping off, I'd say, because he's 33 years old at this point. So hopefully we can maybe get a chance to be competitive when he's still doing decently, because he might be a retirement pretty early in the franchise mode. And then we have a fourth line left winger in Matt Pettinger, who's not really much of anything, and he is a pending UFA. Right wing wise, we got Martin St. Louis. He's signed here for a couple of years before he hits to the free agent market potentially, which is a bit scary. So 3 years. So hopefully we can win a cup with Martin St. Louis still intact in our lineup. If not, we might have to trade him. But I don't really know if I want to do that, obviously, because we want to win a Stanley Cup before this franchise mode ends, if possible. And I think he's a key piece to kind of having that happen to our team. And then you can see we have a big mix of a lot of crap, basically, because our Tukin, really not much of anything. This guy just hit people like crazy, and that's all he is. He's a really big guy, too, 6'4", 255. Still relatively young, so I mean, we could hold on to him as a solid bottom 6 option, but he's not really much of anything. He is a pending UFA. Then we have a couple other younger guys like Steve Downey, for example, who is signed for a couple years before he's got RFA status. This type of guy we could definitely use for like a 4/3 line role. We also have Adam Hall, who's 28. He is, I believe, a few years out from a UFA status. Yeah, a few years out. So maybe we hold on to him as kind of like a 4th line option. And then we also have Martins Karstums, who only played like 40-something games in the NHL and didn't really do much other than that. Obviously, you can't see his stats, but he's 22 years old, so at least he's a good young player, but he's not really going to develop into much in franchise mode likely for us, and he should be a type of guy that we look to replace. Defensively, this is where you can see we kind of struggle quite a bit, and you can see why this team went on to draft Victor Hedman, because Andre Mazaros is our best defenseman. He is signed here for a few years, actually quite a few years, and then he's a pending UFA, so I guess we'll probably hold on to him for our top 4. But you have like Paul Ranger, who is a pending UFA in 2 seasons, and then a lot of guys that are pending UFA on the blue line other than that. Like Krajicek, for example. You have Merrick Malik, who's getting up there, who's a pending free agent. Joseph Melikar, Matt Smaby, and then you also have Noah Welsh. So you can see our defensive core definitely is not that great. So I think definitely drafting a defenseman or acquiring a defenseman would be something we would need to take this team to the next level. And then goalie-wise, you can see we have Mike Smith, who is actually decent. Like, he starts to get better as he gets older, which is kind of weird because in real life, I believe his best year was 2012 with the Coyotes. And then obviously with the Oilers, he was playing pretty decently in the regular season. But he is only signed here for a few years. We also have Kari Ramo to kind of build around, but he's not really much of anything. And Mike McKenna. And in the system, we do have one goaltender, that being Rico Helenius. This guy was actually a pretty high up pick, but he didn't pan out, so he's in the AHL, and that is pretty much it, I think. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's basically what our roster looks like. So we're pretty much reliant on St. Louis and LeCavalier, Malone, Prospel, and also a young Steven Stamkos at this point in time. So don't know if this team's going to be competitive right out of the gate. They probably won't be, so hopefully we get a decent pick, or we end up over-simulating a little bit and acquiring somebody that could take us to that next level. I think definitely defense is our #1 priority at this point in time. So there is that. Let's advance through the preseason, and I'll also actually show you guys quickly the draft class briefly. We'll simulate through the preseason, and we'll take a look at some of the other AI teams. But you can see John Tavares is the #1 pick in this year's draft. I did make him. He's, I believe, a medium elite, maybe a high elite. There's also Victor Hedman, which would be really good for this team, obviously, to boost up that back end a bit. Chris Kreider's apparently in the top 3. Matt Duchene, Ryan O'Reilly, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Even OEL wouldn't be that bad of an option for a defensive core to get more bodies into it a little bit. Also, guys like Nick Leddy is in this draft class, Tyson Berry, and I think that's almost all I made for this draft class. Yeah, I think that's all I made for this draft class in terms of forwards. Goalie-wise, there's Robin Lehner, so if we want to add a goalie prospect, Lehner's there. Darcy Kemper, Mikko Koskinen, for example, and I think there might be a few others, but looks like maybe not actually. Yeah, maybe not any more goalies. It's kind of surprising. I thought they made more than 3 goalies. But yeah, that's basically the draft class. So let's advance through the preseason to the start of the regular season. And we'll kind of take a look around the league just to see what AIs are working with for their lineup. And yeah, we'll see if we're actually a decent team compared to some of these other teams. Hopefully most of them are using my created players and not players down in the AHL, because that would be kind of annoying, but that does tend to happen with these type of modes just because of the lack of creative players you can have in this game. But let's go over first and adjust our lineup and make sure we have it set up properly so we can get rid of this minus if we can. I don't know if we will be able to be honest. Looks like we can't really. I almost feel like playing Stamkos as a winger in his first season, to be honest, but I might have to try him at center at that second line spot. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to get rid of that -1 on the third line. All things considered, chemistry doesn't look too bad. So I guess I'll keep it like that. Also, I forgot to mention we do have Noah. I know I did mention we have Noah Welsh. Noah Welsh is just like a former Penguins guy that was just kind of like a top 6 defenseman, but he barely played, so that's why I made him into a 7th D. So he's not really much of anything, but he is relatively young at 26. So there is some okay young pieces to build around, but most of them aren't going to grow into being anything huge. So, like I said, definitely we got to rely on LeCavalier, St. Louis, and Stamkos, I think. Also Prospo and Malone, but those guys are getting up there in age a little bit. So hopefully we could do good while this top six isn't super old. Like St. Louis could drop off in the first few years of this franchise mode. So there is going to be our lineup. Let me check the power play, make sure it's set up properly. I want Stamkos on the first unit, kind of. Because obviously I think he would probably be the best chance for like a Calder. So we'll probably change Ryan Malone to the second unit, to be honest. We'll go Stamkos on the point because we know he's got that slapping and all that stuff. So we'll take that. We'll take Stamkos off this unit. And we'll put Ryan Malone on this unit with Halpern and I guess Martin's Carsons, even though Carsons isn't much of anything. Maybe he could outgrow that top AHL top 6 potential. And then I guess we'll keep the penalty kill probably the same, right? Halpern, yeah, it's fine. Adam Hall, Vinny LeCavalier, sure, why not? Even though he's kind of a liability defensively, why not? Why not? Okay, let's take a look at what some of the AI teams are rocking around at this point in time, and I think at that point it'll probably be long enough to call it the end of the first episode, but next episode we'll probably sim up to the trade deadline, and then we could potentially look for some trades for episode 3 and whatnot. But here's what Anaheim is running. Good they didn't call up anybody, so Solani, Getzlav, Perry, yeah, you can see this team is going to be pretty decent. In real life, I think they were knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. Or actually, no, they knocked out San Jose in the first round of the playoffs, I think it was. But yeah, this is a really nasty Ducks team, especially on the defensive side of things. Good goaltending as well. And they did call up Nicholas Deschamps, which is funny because I put this guy in the AHL because he was an actual Anaheim Ducks prospect. I didn't make him in this game. That's why he's 32, so you know. I didn't make him, or else I would have made him if I would have had more roster slots. Nokalainen is their only depth option that I made. We head to Atlanta. Okay, this is not a bad looking Thrashers team. A little bit weaker on the bottom 6, but it's kind of neat to see what the AIs are throwing together for lineup combinations. The defensive side of things, though, that's definitely going to hurt them a bit unless like Bogosian develops a lot. Who knows, maybe he will. Kari letting in between the pipes, and Perrin is the only scratch guy. We head to Boston, obviously a pretty good team at this point. Or starting to, I should say. Yeah, pretty solid. Young Phil Kessel, Patrice Bergeron at 23, who's now retired, and David Krejci is going to play alongside him, which is interesting. Both those guys have just retired. So there's all that. Defensively, yeah, that is nasty. And goalie-wise, Tim Thomas, Manny Fernandez. And the only scratch that I made is Shane Knighty. But they are using Andrew Brunarchuk as a depth guy, which is pretty awesome. Considering, like I said, I put some of those guys in the AHL so that way they have actual real players playing for them. But the thing is, they aren't the real ones that I made. Here's a look at Buffalo for 2009. Pretty good center depth. And enters their defensive core. Not the best defensive core. Looks like Teppo Newman is dropping off a little bit. Unless I made him an 81, which I think I might have. Since he is in his last year of his career, I think. Ryan Miller and Patrick Aleem. And depth-wise, Clark MacArthur will be taking the seat. That kind of sucks. I was hoping that they'd use him. Carolina. Looking pretty good as well. Brandon Sutter getting in on the 4th line. Yeah, this is a decent-looking Canes team. And they are in our division, so we got to watch out for that. Only scratch is UC Jokinen. I don't know why they're scratching UC Jokinen over a guy like Ryan Beta, but I am not here to question things. I just know AI logic can be kind of weird sometimes. Columbus. Who do they have scratched is the question. It's been a while since I've looked at this roster I've made. It's probably one of my favorite roster builds I've done. Christian Backman. Okay. So Christian Backman will be a depth defenseman for the Blue Jackets. We head to Calgary. Jerome McGinley. It's going to be exciting once I actually get to starting my next roster build, though, but for NHL 24, because I am very excited to show you guys what I am going to be coming up with. I'm going to be cooking up some cool stuff. Adam Party as the depth defenseman. That makes sense. Chicago. Yeah, this is going to be a great team. This is going to be a great team. I don't know why they're putting Samuel Paulson as the winger when he has better face-offs than Colin Fraser, but I'm not going to question things, or try not to at least. Duncan Keith is going to be playing on the second pairing. Brian Campbell gets first pairing apparently. Ben Eager, the only scratch. Shout out to Ben Eager. Colorado. Also, this gives you guys a better look at what my roster kind of looks like in a sense, because when I did my 2009 roster overview, I don't think I went through like lineup combinations. So, Cody McCormick's the only depth guy in Colorado. We head to the Dallas Stars. Pretty good looking team. A little bit of lacking depth, I'd say, on the bottom six. Fabian Brunstrom gets put on the bottom six, or the fourth line over Chris Birch. It's a bit weird. Andrew Hutchinson gets in as full-time defenseman. And Brendan Morrison randomly gets scratched, which is kind of weird. Like, why wouldn't you scratch Chris Birch over Brendan Morrison? Weird. And then, yeah, this Detroit team is nasty. I would assume they should win a Stanley Cup year one, them or Pittsburgh. If they don't win the Stanley Cup, I will be kind of surprised because this team is very, very deep. And there's their goaltending combinations of Osgood and Conklin. And Corey Emerton's the only depth guy. You can see, like I said, I had to add some of those guys that were actually drafted by them to the AHL just to make it a bit more realistic. Why is Sean Horkov playing fourth line center? Like Kyle Brodsky actually be in that spot. It's a bit weird. I know I keep on pointing things out, but sometimes I just don't understand the logic. Strudwick is depth in Edmonton. Florida. Okay, looks pretty solid. I'm curious to see how this actually simulates. So, like, who's going to be the best goal scorer of the season, all that type of thing. I'm hoping Stamkos jumps up into being a really good player, though. Cullimore is the only depth option, and Michael Repick. LA. Looking a little bit weak here on the bottom six as well, except for, like, with Justin Williams and Hanzus there. Defensively, a young Drew Doughty. We'll see who ends up winning the Calder between Doughty, Stamkos, and I don't remember who else would be up there. Probably Bogosian, but I don't think Bogosian's going to simulate that well, but you never know. Jack Johnson is scratched at 22. Don't tell Jay Fresh about that. Minnesota. Derek Bugard gets in the lineup. I like that. Because sometimes AI scratches enforcers, right? So, Marc-Andre Bergeron, only depth guy. We head to the Montreal Canadiens, who hosted the All-Star Game in 2009. They look pretty damn good. Yeah, both Gustafsson's in the lineup as well. Hopefully they play together at some point. That'd be kind of neat. Goalie-wise, Carey Price at 21. Maybe he wins the Calder. Never know. And Francis Bouillon is going to be the depth guy. We head to New Jersey, because apparently Nashville's not next. Wow, Brendan Shanahan. Forgot I made him in this build, to be honest. This is a very aging Devils team, so they shouldn't be too good for a while after this point. Martin Brodeur, though, between the pipes might help out a lot. And Brian Rolston is scratched. Why would you scratch Brian Rolston in favor of, like, Mike Rupp? It's a bit weird. Nashville looking pretty strong. A little bit on the weak on the bottom six. Roddick Bonk's playing bottom six, like the fourth line over, like, Antti Pilstrom, which is weird. Also, you could play Tutu on the fourth line, but they're playing him in a third line role. Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this simulates and who ends up winning some awards and all that type of thing. We got Scott Nickel as the depth guy. New York Islanders. This should be another team that's also up there in the draft lottery like us. We should be a terrible team technically, but this Islanders team should also be pretty bad. You can see because their best forward is Trent Hunter at this stage. So you can see why they got John Tavares first overall in real life. And their best defenseman and best player in general is Mark Streit. So, and then that goaltending combination of an injury-prone Rick DiPietro and Jan Denis. And Doug Weight has been scratched. Wow. So they scratched Doug Weight in favor of like players like Tim Jackman. Okay. New York Rangers. What do you got? Pretty solid looking team. Chris Drury's going to play fourth line. I wish the AI logic was a bit smarter in this game, but it is what it is. But okay. Oh man. Blair Betts is going to be depth for them. We head to the Ottawa Senators. Looking pretty solid. Good to see them using Schubert as the forward because I made him a forward, not a defenseman in this. Who is scratched is the question. Hopefully it's not somebody significant. Sean Donovan. Okay, that makes kind of sense. Since Sean Donovan at this point in time is like a bottom 6 kind of guy at most. Okay, so they're playing Daniel Briere as a winger for Philly. That's interesting. I like actually the setup for Phillies a little bit because they're using Claude Giroux as a third-line center, so that center depth is going to be insane at some point. And instead of using Briere as a center, they're using him as a winger because I believe he was worse at faceoffs. Actually, he was the same at faceoffs as Richards, but oh well. Defensively, looking pretty good. Obviously, this Flyers team was like a year away from going to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2010. Riley Cote, the only depth guy. That makes sense too. Good to see some teams are actually making sense with who they're scratching. Other teams not so much. And there's a guy that shouldn't be in the lineup, Tyson Empey. Why are they calling this guy up and putting a 69 overall guy in instead? There must be somebody significant scratched that shouldn't be. Trying to think of who it is though. Oh, Nigel Dawes and Enver Leeson. Okay. Why would you put in a 69 overall over Nigel Dawes, the KHL legend? Come on. Makes no sense. And yeah, this Pittsburgh team should do a really good year one. If they don't, I will be pretty surprised. Very deep team. They're running Matt Cook on the 4th line, which is nice because I hate Matt Cook. There you go. Goalie-wise, Fleury and Guerin. And depth-wise, Eaton and Bill Guerin got scratched. Damn. Why would you scratch Bill Guerin in favor of Craig Adams? I don't get it. Hopefully some of those guys that are scratched end up getting in the lineup at some point, though. Here's that San Jose Sharks team with JR as the 4th line center. Oh, man. Yeah, I could already tell this is going to be a really fun series. Sucks that it's a short-term one, but the thing is NHL 24 will come out before we know it. It's like 2 months away, probably. There is the St. Louis Blues playing Korea as a third line right winger. What the heck? I get that they want to play Oshie up there, but still. Damn. That sucks having Paul Korea as a third liner. He best be getting some good power play time at least, but BJ Karambin is scratched. We head to Toronto. This is not a good Toronto team, so they might be able to draft John Tavares. Who knows? Defensively, yeah, this team shouldn't do well. If they do well, I will be kind of surprised about that. Especially with the goaltending, Gerber and Toskala. Eesh. And Luke Shen is scratched at 19 years old. I get that he only has top 6 potential, but in real life he was a high up pick, so I think they would have put him in instead of like Jonas Frogen easily. Or Frogren, I should say. I was like Frogen for some reason. And then we had to Vancouver. Henrik and Daniel are not playing together. That kind of sucks. Because Mason Raymond has taken that top line left wing spot. Okay. And playing Matt Sundin as a 4th liner is a choice. Definitely a big choice. I mean, he definitely wasn't the same player as he was in Toronto, but still. And Bobby Lou in net. Ozzy Vannon in his depth. And finally, we head to the Washington Capitals. Young Ovi, Backstrom, and 7. That's a nasty first line. They should produce really well. Kozlov, Fedorov, Fleischmann. Yeah, this is a solid-looking Caps team. I don't know who is scratched off the top of my head. Michael Nylander got scratched at 36. I honestly would have put him in and then probably put like Gordon as the 4th line center. Scratched like David Steckel. Or use Steckel as a winger or something like that. Or even use Nylander as a winger because I know Gordon and Steckel are fantastic face-off guys. So that's interesting. One last thing. Let's take a look actually at the trading block as well just to see if there's any cool names on the block. I don't think we're going to make trades before we start the season, but we might as well take a look anyways. J.S. Giguère got thrown on the block by Anaheim. Kind of makes sense with the emergence of Jonas Hiller. Reasoner and Perrin on the block for Atlanta as well as Eric Bolton. Boston has Fernandez on the block. What about Buffalo? Nothing really. Calgary, nothing really. Nothing in Carolina. Chicago has a couple guys on the block, or one guy, and that's Heavy Bullen, who is a pending UFA. Nothing there in Columbus. Dallas has a couple guys. Robida, Sador, Mike Medano's on the block, Yuri Letnin, and Brendan Morrison. So I guess Dallas doesn't think they're going to be competitive. Just kind of weird because they have a pretty good looking roster. Steve Staios on the block in Edmonton. Same with Jason Strudwick. Nothing in Florida. Nothing really in LA or Minnesota. Nothing in Montreal. Nothing in Nashville. Nothing in New Jersey. Pretty much nothing everywhere. Mike Fisher's on the block. That's kind of intriguing because in real life he was dealt in 2010-11, I think it was, or 2011-12. Chris Phillips is on the block, which makes no sense. Philip Kuba as well, and Jarkko Ruutu, and Mike Comrie, who in a sense actually acquired this season from the Islanders. Ken Klee and Ed Jovanovski are on the block. So some notable names for sure. Thomas Greiss as a prospect goaltender for the Sharks. Marek Schwartz is a prospect goaltender for the Blues. That didn't pan out IRL. Vesa Toskala is on the block. Jonas Frogan's on the block. Curtis Sanford. Corey Schneider's on the block. That's an interesting one. A lot of trade value for him, kind of. Washington has a good chunk of guys on the block too. Fedorov, Kozlov, Pody, Nylander, and Erskine. So there is a lot of players on the block, but I don't think we're going to make a trade early in a season like this. We might as well simulate 41 games in next episode, see how we're doing, and then kind of choose our direction. But I think we're going to be probably a bad team to start off this year. And then maybe starting next year, we could start bringing in some good free agents and trying to get this team into winning a Stanley Cup before we end this series off in like 20-something episodes. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of our Throwback 2009 franchise mode with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, yeah, anyways, next episode, like I said, sim 41 games, see how this team does, and kind of choose our direction from there. And obviously, like I said, we're going to try and get through as much of this season and these next few seasons as possible, so we could at least maybe get a chance at a Stanley Cup before the series ends. Send anything down below, and I'll see you guys next time.